we get started this morning with a response to the readings, I first would like to see if I can get everyone who read the gospel in another tongue to raise their hand who read not the gospel, the Acts reading, so we can know who was reading. Okay, awesome. Thank you all. Thank you. A little tiny experience, a shadow of the experience of what they must have felt and heard on that day of Pentecost, which indeed is the birthday of the church. So happy birthday!
Also with you.
Yes. It's all of our birthdays all together. We have lots of transitions in our lives. Some are filled with joy, some are marked by sorrow. And some come along just once in a year, some come along once in a lifetime. Waking up in the morning and going to sleep at night are transitions that we experience every day of our lives. Transitions are times that we can take to reflect. Reflect on what went before, reflect on who we are in this very present moment, and reflect and imagine on who God might be calling us to be. And the church, of course, is no different than we as individuals. Christianity, of course, has had many turning points in its almost 2,000 years of existence, many transitions, some just filled with joy, and some not so joyful. But each year, the church gets to celebrate its birthday on this, the day of Pentecost today. And as we celebrate our birthday communally in the church, I'd like for us to reflect a little bit on the church, its past, its presence, its present, and what God might be desiring or dreaming for us in the future. Okay. What was the church's birthday like? Well, we had that echo of an experience. What was Christianity like when it was just a newborn infant? Where has the church been? Who are we together today? And where is God calling us in the future? Well, the birthday, we had a small group of folks who had followed Jesus as their teacher. They had witnessed his death and his miraculous resurrection, and then he left them. And here they are, a small, scared group gathered in Jerusalem. And it's another big feast day. When they had last been gathered together in Jerusalem, it was the feast of the Passover. And now it's 50 days later, and the Feast of Pentecost, or the Jewish Feast of the Weeks. And again, people are coming from all over the world to Jerusalem to celebrate this festival. And so this small group of folks, they had participated in and witnessed great and miraculous events, but they're still just this kind of ragged band of scared and probably insecure individuals. But on this day, the day of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit descended upon them and transformed them into something entirely new. And so filled with the Holy Spirit, they went forth out into the world, to all corners and neighborhoods of Jerusalem and beyond, to Palestine, all the way on either end to Spain, to India, wherever they could travel. They brought this Spirit with them, a spirit of healing and transforming other people's lives as their lives had been transformed, teaching about the good news of Jesus and sharing this experience into which others could participate as well. That community, still pretty small, though being spread out, had some terrible trials as well as deep joys. It's small but growing, but it's just one religion among many in the ancient Roman world. In that early church, the lines of authority were not really fixed. Things moved smoothly, but perhaps a bit chaotically, as everyone responded to the gifts of the Holy Spirit and shared those gifts with each other as the Spirit had given them gifts. So it was perhaps slightly chaotic. But they were limited only by their imagination and by the call and power of God. The community was close and warm. warm, gathering in one another's homes, caring for all the members of the community, but always having more energy and more spirit to spill over outside of those home gatherings to share with anyone with whom they came into contact. Since Christianity was simply one religion among many, your identity as a Christian in this infant church was clear, sometimes painfully so. You were Christian, not something else, and you often suffered for the choice that you had made. During times of persecution, Christians were ostracized, tormented, imprisoned, and often killed. They experienced this power of salvation and healing that was offered freely to everyone. Yet, at the same time, belonging to this young church could be distinctly hazardous for your physical health and well-being. As Christianity grew up, the world around the young church changed. The church emerged into a long period of life that historians call the Age of Christendom. All of the known and civilized world was Christian, and folks got their identity in the church by being born into it. All you had to do was live and breathe. There's no choice for any other affiliation. And the church during this time in the areas where it held sway enjoyed tremendous strengths and also fell prey to immense pitfalls. For when the church was motivated by greed, that greed coupled with its absolute power over the people in the land could prove quite destructive. And sometimes the church, as we know from history, was too quick to destroy what it considered to be ungodly, whether it was in the midst of the church, in the lands it controlled, like the Inquisition and the witch hunts, or if it was beyond the lands controlled by the church, such as during the Crusades. And sometimes the church in history did not speak out against ungodliness soon enough. And that happens generation after generation as tyrant after tyrant hurts their people in the name of God, and the church does not stand up. And yet, throughout history, the power of the Spirit of God continues to shine through individual lives and shine through the community as a whole. And so today, have we reached some kind of maturity today? Well, if we don't know the lifetime of the church, we can't really know where we are on the line. We might be simply equivalent to a 5-year-old. We've gotten through the terrible twos, but we still have plenty to learn. Or we might be a young adult, age 18, or midlife, 50 or 40. Or one thing we know is that we have passed out of that age of Christendom. It is no more. No longer do we live surrounded by a Christian world. No longer can we count on being immersed in a Christian culture. And aside from the fact that we are not experiencing too much persecution, at least in this country today, the church might have more in common with the church of the 2nd century than it does with the church of the 17th. And we're currently challenged with what it means for us to be Christians in the midst of a pluralistic society. The power of the church is no longer absolute. What the church says doesn't necessarily go anymore. And the world around us, it's changing so rapidly. And what does that mean for us, for our identity as people of faith, our mission as Christians, one and another? And on the birthday of the church, we reflect on questions such as these. I am standing up here in the red garment, and you are sitting down. I am speaking, and you are listening. But do not let that make you think that I somehow that I do have answers that you do not. I only have the questions. You also share the questions. And it is together that we will live into the answers. We need to take upon ourselves the responsibility at times of transition to reflect. We need to take upon ourselves that responsibility of looking at who we were, who we are today, and who God is calling us to become. And based on those reflections each year, or if you are really enthusiastic, each day, and if you're less enthusiastic, maybe every couple of years, wherever and whatever we take from those reflections, we need to respond. We need to act into whomever or whatever God is calling us toward. And if we don't engage in that process, we risk waking up one morning at 30 or 60 or 80 or 90 and see time, a life, was filled with potential, wasted. So whenever you hit a turning point in your life, be it waking up in the morning or going to bed at night, a birthday, a graduation, a marriage, the birth of your first child, any time of change, I invite you to reflect for a moment on your past. Imagine right now, right here and now, for a moment, the possibilities in the present. And step forward in trust, in partnership with God, into that future of God's dream that we cannot quite see, but we have faith. Happy birthday, everyone.